right, let's look at your suffixes really quickly. And get going.
No.
Oh, nobody cares. Hey, y'all kind of keep it down because I'm going to go ahead and record. I recorded earlier, but I need to record. You can ask your questions. Let me chat.
So we can answer your questions?
Yeah, but I just don't want you to be talking while I'm talking.
Okay.
All right, so suffixes, first block of suffixes, this will be Thursday. We only just have one more section and then we're almost done. So, all right, so the first three all mean pertaining to AC, AL, and IC. So, for example, cardiac. Cardiac is what?
Heart.
Yeah, pertaining to the heart, right?
She didn't make sure it on.
Yeah, it's on. I think it is. Yeah. All right. What about pericardial?
Around the heart?
Pertaining to.
Pertaining to around the heart, or this really is pertaining to like the pericardium itself, which is the lining around the heart. But yeah, that's a literal. Good. Let's see how you can pick now that you know some suffixes and some prefixes and some root words. It's not too hard to pick out what words mean. All right, and then what okay, tachycardic.
Fast heart.
Okay, we start with the suffix pertaining to a fast heart is the literal meaning. And I will always give you credit. Anytime we do any quizzes or anything like that, I'll always give you credit for writing the literal meaning, even if it doesn't necessarily make complete sense. Okay, like that doesn't necessarily make complete sense. But anytime you see that AC or AL or IC, it usually clues you in that that term is a descriptive term. It's describing something. So a person might be tachycardic. Okay, that means they have their heart rate is up. Okay, the heart rate is elevated. Tachycardic. Okay, so that's another example. Good. See how you're putting those words together? Pretty cool, isn't it? I like learning the whole new language. All right, Alsha. What if I do? Arthralgia. Arthralgia.
That's like joint.
Arth to the joint.
Arth is joint.
So yeah,
What's that?
painful joints or pain in the joints.
Like arthritis or inflation.
Right.
Painful
Arthralgia,
joints.
Painful joints. Okay, seal. Okay, seal is a hernia. You know what a hernia is?
Yes. It's up what?
Hole in your muscle.
Yes. So if you have an abdominal hernia, then usually it means that there's like a rip or a tear, some kind of separation in your belly muscles, so that the intestines actually, like a part of the intestines, will push through. You've probably seen pictures or something of an umbilical hernia. Babies have umbilical hernias. People do.
Is it
Where
rare?
it comes back through out, like even behind their belly button.
Is it rare for a baby born with
That's called an omphalocele, which is a seal. So yes, what she's talking about, yeah, that is definitely rare. Sometimes it can be fixed.
Because that's what my cousin had. She was born with her intestines and everything out. Her stomach.
I'll show you. I have a picture of this, and I'll show you in a few minutes. That's called, I think it's omphalocele. Anyway. It's just, forming, you know, the way that, you know, it's kind of like I think about when Micah was still a fetus, as they say, or was still in the belly. He had what's called they're called choroid plexus cysts, where choroid plexus is the part of your brain that actually makes cerebrospinal fluid. And it's kind of like when that part of the brain is forming, it's like it pinches off of something else. Like whenever it's actually being produced and created, you know, it's like it pinches off of another thing. So what those cysts do, they're just like an extra little, I don't know, it's where some of that fluid just kind of pinched off and made its own little bubble of fluid, and they just get absorbed over time. And it's not a big deal. I went, I think, at my 18-week sonogram, see them on there, and then when I went back at like 22 weeks, they were gone. So they just kind of get absorbed. But that's, you know, it's kind of the same idea. When things are forming in the womb, you know, you have different tissues that have to meet together, and think about like the eyelids are covered. I mean, the eyes are covered for a long time, and I don't know. And this little enzyme comes and like opens up the eyelids so that they'll open. And I mean, there's, you know, so things. I mean, when you know, when all those organs, you think about what it takes to make the body function and work, and sometimes those form on the outside of the body. Now, I had a friend whose babies, it's like, I don't remember what the term was, like a diaphragmatic hernia basically, but the belly was actually, and the abdomen was formed on top of the diaphragm instead of under the diaphragm. So because of that, the lungs never developed because there wasn't space for them, you know. So things like that happen sometimes, but that's called an omphalocele. I actually thought about that word before you even said that. But a seal, it doesn't necessarily have to be a abdominal hernia, just an abdominal hernia. It could be anything else that's herniated, like a cystocele. A cystocele would be what? Herniated.
And a fluid builds
Bladder. So the bladder herniated, potentially maybe through the urethra or something like that. Okay. So there's some other examples. All right. Going back up here.
Oh.
All right. Centesis says is a surgical puncture to remove fluid. So what would a thoracentesis be? Yes. Okay, so a puncture, surgical puncture to remove fluid from the chest. You ever watched a movie or something and they're like, oh my gosh, their lungs are collapsing, and they like stab a big needle or something in there and pull out blood? Okay, that's really a thoracentesis. Okay, they're just trying to remove fluid. Or another, maybe an arthrocentesis might be where if you've ever, I don't know that that's the official name for it, but it makes sense.
Puncture your joints?
Well, to remove fluid. So, you've ever gone maybe with a swollen knee or something and they stick a needle in it to pull fluid off of it? That would be a centesis. Okay. Another word you hear a lot is the amniocentesis. Okay. Amniotic fluid is fluid that the baby lives in while they're in their mother's womb. So an amniocentesis is where they actually puncture the amniotic sac to draw some fluid from there to test for maybe there's some kind of genetic problems, or that's not a routine procedure. They only do that if it's necessary.
I mean, ain't that the same thing as the placenta or whatever?
Well, placenta is its own organ. It is kind of part of the amniotic sac, but it's not the whole thing. Placenta is kind of its own thing. Okay, ectomy is removal. So what would a nephrectomy be? Removal of a kidney. A colectomy.
Taking out your colon.
Taking out part or your whole colon. Good. Anemia is blood condition. What's one word that makes you think of?
blood
Anemia.
clot,
anemia.
pneumonia,
Now, it's spelled a little different.
anemia, and pneumonia, same thing.
Anemia and pneumonia. That one really, this is the whole root word, and this is the suffix.
So that's what it
Condition.
reminds
It
me.
means condition.
Uh,
So like a one condition. Okay, but anemia. I mean, I can see it still has an IA. Okay, but leukemia is one that you usually hear. Leuko is white, like a white blood cell. So leukemia is abnormal condition of the white blood cells, or white cells. Anemia, and means what?
Without.
Not or without. So literally means condition without blood, which doesn't mean that you have no blood necessarily, but means that your blood's not functioning the way it needs to, or it's just not. Maybe it's not holding. Maybe you haven't been taking in enough iron, so it can't carry as much oxygen, or maybe could be lots of different things. You could not have enough volume. It could just be straight that you don't have enough. Itis is inflammation or infection. We talked about that. We talked about arthritis. Gastritis would be gastro.
Stomach or something. I don't know, something like
Gas. You
stomach.
get gas in your stomach.
Yeah, bubbles.
Okay, how about this one? This has got all 3 word parts.
epigastric. No.
Epigastric is a good one. That's a good word.
Endogastric.
Cardi means heart.
Uh-huh.
Endo means, I don't know.
And so in the heart, swelling
Like inflammation
inside the heart.
inside the heart, or the endocardium is the inner layer of the heart. So yes. So you start with the suffix and then you head back to the beginning. Okay.
I think it was
So-
heart.
Endo is always inside. Think it's in the heart. Okay. Endo. And whatever you got there. Genesis or genic, or it could just be gen. What word have we talked about that has this at the end?
Oh, it says gen or gen?
Okay.
Pathogen means what?
Like an H.
The bacteria.
Causing disease. Pathodisease.
It doesn't say it.
Okay, so gen or genesis or genic, those all mean pertaining to producing or the production of. Genesis tells you that it's an actual, like a process, okay, versus genic would be like a description of that. But that all means producing, creating, something along those lines. Osteogenesis would be what? Yeah, production of bone.
Osteoporosis.
I like when you start thinking about other words that sound similar.
I don't know what that is.
Think about it.
Wait, what is
Let's figure out what
osteoporosis?
osteoporosis is. Let's think it through.
Bone.
Okay, let's think it through.
Bone marrow.
Hold on.
Osteoporosis.
Break it.
I'll tell you what, I think on the next page you'll see cis, or it might have osis. It really should be SIS. It's on the next page.
Pertaining to.
No,
Oh,
on the last page.
abnormal bone.
Abnormal condition.
Abnormal.
Bone growth.
Condition of the bone.
Abnormal
condition of bone.
Marrow.
What does this sound like?
Poro.
Or
Pores.
Oh.
Abnormal
Skin.
condition of bone pores. It's where your bone becomes very porous because it's there's not enough calcium there to keep it strong, and it literally looks
Why
like a
you drink
sponge.
vitamin D. Vitamin C.
Lots of vitamin D.
the
Calcium.
sun.
Yeah, I
vitamin
don't
D.
know.
Usually it's hormone. A lot of times osteoporosis is hormone. Like women tend to get worse than me.
Grass.
All right, gram is picture, and I want you to write this down. Could be picture or record.
Gram.
Gram could be picture or record.
Look, it's right there on your
Picture or record.
Oh.
picture.
Like a
Another
sonogram.
one.
Yes.
There you go. Very good.
No, you didn't.
Sono means what?
Graham.
Picture of sound, and that's exactly what it is.
Like when you get a sonogram of a baby.
They use sound waves to bounce off the baby. That's what you know. Okay, electrocardiogram. Okay, gram, picture a record. And then we haven't had electro, but yes, you're right, heart is here. So picture of the, what do you think this is?
Electricity.
Electricity in the heart. So electrical currents in the heart. That's what an EKG does. Is it looks, your heart works on a specific kind of electrical current. It starts in one place and it
Goes
has
out the
specific
same.
areas that it goes every time it beats.
I can tell you every part of it.
Okay?
I know it.
So that's what that does. That's what that little wave, each little wave that you see on an EKG, but each one of those means something, and each one of these waves occur at a certain point during that electrical current.
What's like one of them things is that does a scale of like earthquakes that you just heard.
Seismometer, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
I only know that because we just watched that movie the other day.
Oh, San Andreas.
Andreas.
I watched it too.
All right, and then malacia, the last one on here is softening. So osteomalacia would be
Softening.
softening of the bone. Chondromalacia,
Chondro means
cartilage, softening of cartilage. Good.
chondro means hard.
Chondro means cartilage.